can remember back in 1975 when Armand LaMontagne wasn't known by no one. Back then, he was a real regular guy. Of course, that was before he went Hollywood on us. Oh, he built a couple of houses, done a crucifix for the church, and what have you. Nothing real spectacular, nothing you or I couldn't do.
Well, Armand, he's our local celebrity around here. He's made quite a big difference in North Scituate. And here at Famous Pizza, we got most of Armand's early paintings. We made a deal with him, since they were pretty mediocre, that he could have free coffee any time. And we just wanted to take them off his hands so nobody else would ever see him.
What do you think of Armand LaMontagne?
Who?
I think the turning point for Armand came when he fooled the art experts with that great Brewster chair.
The turning point for Armand came when he really met me. Is that right, Gladys?
Absolutely.
I first met Armand in the winter of 1987 when he was working on the Larry Bird sculpture. And when I heard his name, I expected to see a little Frenchman in a beret. Jeez, imagine my surprise.
I've studied the LaMontagne films made by the Sports Museum. I can detect a distinct metamorphosis distributed over the time gradient. In layman's terms, he's changed. For instance, in the early years, known among LaMontagne scholars as the Blue Period, he was a bit reticent, certainly uncomfortable on camera. Obviously, his vocabulary hadn't yet caught up with his talent. Witness Exhibit A.
But I guess what it boils down to is just a lot of chiseling and hopefully in the right place.
The noteworthy thing about LaMontagne's style was his repetition. With time and increased media exposure, he seems to have grown smoother, but more predictable. Indeed, he really seems to have lost the ability to remember which stories he's told to which people. It's a common syndrome among people suddenly thrown into the limelight.
Predictable.
Well, that's predictable. Just predictable.
This is the exciting part, the critical part, simply because you could blow it.
Simply because you could blow it.
And consequently, therein lies the challenge.
And consequently, therein lies the fascination and the challenge.
Therein lies the challenge.
The challenge.
And the challenge, that's what keeps you going and going and going and going.
I don't want to sound too critical, but Armand has let the success get to him. One day he came into the archive room at the Sports Museum and ran his finger across the TV screen for dust. Imagine.
LaMontagne has often been asked how long it takes him to do a sculpture, and he always says a lifetime. Always. He's certainly clever, but one might expect a bit more variation in his creative response process.
My largest sculpture is my house.
Just like Yaz, I make my living swinging a stick.
I can set up shop any place in the world where there are trees.
I finally took the chip off his shoulder.
It's not a job, it's a lifestyle. See, I don't have a job, I have a lifestyle.
I don't have a job. I have a lifestyle.
Yeah, I think that's it's the caveman way of working. You know, I don't have to worry about the elements.
Analysts have watched hundreds of hours of LaMontagne footage and concluded that he uses the caveman analogy more than any other. Here there are some variations, but LaMontagne seems to associate very closely with the caveman. Interestingly, this footage, shot surreptitiously by a graduate student in LaMontagne's backyard, shows that the feeling is mutual.
I remember when we started work on the Bobby Orr sculpture, Armand had all kinds of problems. Now, first, he's up there on the block with a chainsaw ready to go, and he blows a fuse. And then a couple minutes later, he's lifting a big chunk of wood down to the floor, and he gets a hernia. Unbelievable.
The hernia episode went largely unreported in the press for obvious reasons. But my understanding is that it almost caused a delay in the unveiling of the Orr sculpture.
The paintings are pretty mediocre, and I'd tell him to his face if he wasn't such a great guy.
This is Frank Carpano reporting. In this rare inside look at the world of Armand LaMontagne, we see the master craftsman at work, painstakingly chiseling out every splinter, aware that even the slightest mistake could... Can we shoot this again?
I was at the Bobby Orr dinner when Armand tried his hand at humor. What a tragedy.
LaMontagne's attempts at public speaking were painful and thankfully short-lived.
Geez, I feel like a mosquito that just flew into a nudist camp. Where do you start?
We just sat there, and waited for the real punchline.
Dave came up before God. God says, "Okay, Dave, you're all set." And then Dave was heard saying, muttering as he went in, "It's easier to get into the heaven than it is the Basketball Hall of Fame."
And who?
Seriously, it really is amazing what the man does with wood. I've stopped by here late at night, and Armand says that after working with wood all day long, he feels that it's talking back to him.
What do you think you're doing?
Hell, if I had to listen to his corny jokes all day, I'd probably talk back to him, too.
We humor him, but we can't really build up his ego any more than it is already.
He's been busting my chops for years, and now I'm going to bust his.
Gotcha, Armand.
Gotcha, Armand.
Gotcha, Armand.
Gotcha, Armand.